Welcome back to Imperium Orbis. We are now on episode 5 of the series. In the last episode, we saw a pretty interesting turn of events in America, leading up to the establishment of the League of Free Nations, who I will be calling the LFN. In this video, we will be focusing on the ripple effects of the Chinese collapse from episode 3, but also the effects that some recent events in the Americas have. We begin in Australia. In episode 3, I had mentioned that Australia was going through some immense political struggles, largely due to corruption. This finally reaches a breaking point. A very powerful political figure wins the presidency in not only West Australia but also North Australia. Now, this person is important because he is the head of a very powerful Australian trade company, the Goods Through Straits Corporation. The GSC controls many of the Indonesian straits and brings high taxes on any ships going through. This had come about after the collapse of the global economy post-World War III. So, anyway, now that he is the president of these two nations, he decides to unite them under his rule as he becomes a dictator. With the country forming, he now decides to send military assets to guard the outposts on the straits. This worries the countries that have their straits controlled by the GSC. Because of this, and the higher rising unfair taxes, they decide to act. Before a large chunk of the military assets can arrive, Sumatra, Java, and Flores destroy the GSC outposts off the coast of their islands. New Zealand also joins in on this war, feeling scared of their northern neighbor. Now, let's begin the war. Immediately, the GSC launches a full naval assault on the island nations, due to the troops they were planning to move to the straits now being nearby the nations. The force is mainly focused on the capital of Java, which happens to be where one of the straits are. On the Australian mainland, the GSC focuses on New Zealand first, seeing them as a greater threat. They also take the time to gain full aerial superiority over the Floresian Australian land. Back south, the GSC manages to capture Canberra, the capital of New Zealand. New Zealand was prepared to continue the fight after this. However, when the GSC military threatens to kill the very popular president of New Zealand, they decide it is best to surrender. The GSC then moves up north, and takes the mostly undefended Floresian land, as they had evacuated all forces to their mainland in an attempt to hold off the navy of the GSC. Meanwhile, the GSC lands in Java, allowing the immediate capture of the capital. This allows the quick capture of the island, also giving the GSC a foothold in the Indonesian Isles. Meanwhile, the naval forces that had been bombarding Sumatra decide to move away from the island, in order to launch a naval operation at Flores, seeing their capital in a weak position. They make a landing on the island just south of their capital, and quickly take it. They then gain air superiority over the capital of Flores. It is here where we see a decisive battle in favor of the Indonesian nations, as we see them getting some help. The two Papua nations have both joined the war. This causes the GSC to be set off balance, and they make a new plan. They fortify the islands that they currently control, and aim to knock Papua out of the war. This does cause Flores to recapture their island, but the plan goes into effect. 400,000 GSC troops are landed at multiple spots in Papua. The GSC is able to do this because they have been heavily building up their navy throughout a large part of this war. Meanwhile, the world is watching over this conflict with major concern. Specifically India, who was already seeing economic downturn, which this war was magnifying, as trade routes have been blocked off. This causes a pretty large international crisis, as many nations are seeing their economies take a hit. This also causes some African nations to move away from Imperium Orbis's economical alliance, as they see Orbis is not helping them out at all with this issue, but taking all money for themselves. This causes many African nations to leave the alliance, angering Orbis. Anyway, back to Australia. After long months of hard fighting, the GSC manages to capture the capital of South Papua. It is also at this point where we see the Indonesian nation start to get exhausted from the war, as they were not very strong to begin with, and their supplies are running thin. This allows quick capture of the rest of Papua. Next, the GSC launches their final offensive to hopefully end the war. They launch a huge naval attack on Flores, hoping to capture the capital. This goes successful, and just as the GSC hoped, this causes Flores to leave the war. Now on their own, Sumatra decides to surrender too. Now, let's take a look at this peace treaty here. So, in this peace treaty we can see that the GSC has achieved full dominance over the Oceanian mainland. They also take Java and a huge chunk out of Papua, fully annexing the southern Papua country. They also gain full control of all Indonesian straits. Almost as soon as this war ends, the GSC starts to see a huge amount of profit come through these straits, fueling their economy. Now, let's go back to Africa. As we had just seen, many nations had left Orbis's economical alliance. While this had angered Orbis, they were fine to leave it alone. However, then, some of them joined South Africa's economical alliance. This infuriates Orbis, seeing this as a betrayal. Because of this, they invade several of the nations. This turns out to be a very stupid decision, because not only does it ruin relations with South Africa, who is a rising power, it also leads to Orbis losing an ally, being Carthage. Carthage does not like this aggressive expansion into Africa at all, and they state they will no longer associate with Orbis. This causes Orbis to line up troops on the border of Carthage. This makes them join the LFN. Another nation we see join the LFN is Brazil. In Brazil, Orbis had set up logging companies in the Amazon rainforest, who had not been fair to the Brazilian government in terms of payment. This had led to Orbis to get more and more aggressive toward Brazil, until a breaking point. Brazil demands that all Orbis logging company industries leave the nation, which they reluctantly do. This whole fiasco leads to Brazil joining the LFN. Brazil also influences Venezuela, both Ecuador's and Peru into joining the alliance, in order for Orbis to not be able to exploit them either. At this point the LFN has gone from a small American alliance to a very possible threat to Orbis. The final event of this video I want to discuss takes place in North America. The North American Trade Organization NATO had been feeling threatened by Orbis's expansion into the Americas, but they did not want to join the LFN, insisting on their neutrality. Because of this, we see the founding of the North American Union. This growing movement against Orbis now manifests into a period of tension. Thank you for watching this video. Once again, I am very happy with how this series is going, and I am pleased to see you are enjoying it. Just a note, next Monday's video will be covering some major channel announcements, so be sure to tune in for that. Anyway, thanks for watching.